it's luck. It's like you can have the gene, have all of that, and still lose. You need to be lucky. That morning that you met that potential customers and he had a great day because his daughter got into this great school and he agreed to sign with you that contract that did not make sense. And with that, you raised the money. And with that, you hired the people. And with that, you took the company public and you are in the winning. Or he had a really bad day because she did not got into that school and he said no to the contract and he did not raise the money and he went bankrupt. Like my grandfather always used to say, work really hard to open the door as much as you can to the luck to sneak in. You cannot control the luck. The only thing you control is maybe a little bit to bend how open or closes the door, and that's what determines by how hard you're going to work.
And welcome to the Venture to Victory podcast, where we look at the entrepreneurial journey from funding to exit. And I'm so excited today. We've got Lior Susan in the house today, and he is an amazing entrepreneur, investor, advisor, global thinker. So excited to have you. How are you doing, Lior? How's it going today?
Great to be here, Tim. Thanks for having me.
That's awesome. Well, there's a little bit of quick intro for the group. Lior is the founder and managing partner of Eclipse, which is a different type of investment firm, as we were talking earlier. It's that they invest, they operate, they put things together strategically. And we're going to talk a lot about exactly how his firm has worked. They've raised almost $4 billion of capital under management. So he's what I would call a player in the business. So we're going to get into that in depth. The focus of Eclipse is a little bit different because they've been investing and operating companies that are using technology to transform what we would call physical industries. So these are sectors like manufacturing and transportation, agricultural production, construction, energy, these huge infrastructure sectors that have always run and built our incredible economy here in the United States. So they kind of bridge the gap between hardware, software, and AI. And they're using that to reshape manufacturing supply chains and critical infrastructure with a huge emphasis on the U.S. Now, Lior, as I mentioned before, has been an investor, an entrepreneur, and an advisor, including he played a part in Cisco's acquisition of Intercell. I think that was in 2012, which was a network optimization company for close to $500 million. So that was a big success. By 2022, Lior and Eclipse had raised $2 billion through several funds. And then by April 2023, they had made a big announcement that they're going to raise an additional $1.2 billion for future funds. So getting up to speed now, again, close to $4 billion in assets under management. So mucho dinero, I would say this is a pretty major player, and you're going to find out why when you hear about the sectors that they invest in. So Lior's journey is a little bit different too. He served in the Israeli Special Forces, and that's an interesting journey from there to becoming one of the most influential investors in industrial technology. And it's given him kind of a very unique world perspective, in addition to business perspective, on these huge sectors that are often overlooked by traditional investors like private equity and venture. And Lior, I had an English professor once who said in college, that the greatest poets of all time are able to take massive amounts of information and consolidate them into the shortest amount of words possible, somewhere between 3 and 5. I love when I go to your LinkedIn profile, look at your about section, there's only 4 words in it. It says, I like to build, with an exclamation mark. So that's pretty powerful. My next question, I hear that, I always think, well, build what? And we're going to find all about that. So I'm really excited and really glad that you're on the podcast today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I thought that maybe that professor with ChatGPT ideas and giving you 4 bullets might be the new thing.
Well, that's very true. A long time ago, but I think with ChatGPT changes the whole game for education. Conversation for a different time, but for sure. Well, before we get into this, I just want to touch on a little bit of your personal journey because it is so different, as we were talking about, before the podcast started. You started out when you were younger in a kibbutz. You eventually went into the special forces, and then you eventually made your way to becoming an entrepreneur and building things, and then eventually investor. What are some of those early experiences? What do they have in common? And what were some of the things that you learned from those that help you become successful or help you have a certain type of worldview today as a major investor?
Yeah. growing up in a kibbutz is it's an incredible environment that actually giving you a lot of tools for independency. And when in a young age, like a 14, 15, like my kids, you're not going and driving a tractor that weight a half a ton and going and walking in the field. It's just not something that you do here. But when you grow up in a kibbutz, you're actually getting a lot of tools, because that's kind of the expectation that in hindsight, I think was some of the foundation for me to go build companies and be able to take risk and be able to think out of the box. And yeah, I'm very grateful about that opportunity.
Well, talk about the special forces for a minute, because I know that special forces in the U.S., they always talk about you have to be super agile. There's the focus on the team and the people next to you. I think and you have to be creative because the circumstances on the ground are constantly changing. You have limited information. And I think sometimes that's the way business is. And you have to put together information that's not perfect. And then you have to have the ability from that limited organization to actually take decisive action. And maybe you can share a little bit about why you wanted to get into special forces and kind of how that also relates to what you're doing today.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, right? People, I think, underappreciate how much similar is actually those two worlds. And at the end of the day, you're talking about small, high function teams that getting united behind a mission that looks freaking crazy. And I can say I just described the worlds of startups, and I can say I just described the worlds of special forces. Now, naturally, the stake is different, and here you're not risking your life, and you're not doing things from a physical point of view. But on the emotional point of view, you're actually pushing in both sides, building a startups and running a special forces team in a pretty similar way.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of about the people dependency on each other in order to go and do something that is that unique or that like hard for the mind to imagine. And I think that's why I find this transition from the special forces and the military into the world of startups pretty seamless.
Yeah. I think of the various folks that I've met over the years who were, in the armed forces, who were special forces, Navy SEALs, those types of folks, they always tell you that the success is 100% determined by the group as a team. And you think about it, again, like you just articulated, for a startup company, even as a founder, you got to realize it's not about me, because it's all about execution. And it's a small group around me. If they're not successful, nothing, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how great the idea is, right? You're going to die on the vine. So that team chemistry, focus, commitment to each other is mission critical. And I know as a recruiter for a living, that's the first thing we look at. How do you fit into the culture? How do you fit into the team? What's the chemistry like? Because that's more important than any other skill set or domain experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think, of course, we always remember the names, the Elon Musk and the Jeff Bezos, right? But
Yes.
you ask them and they will always contribute most of the value to the team. And it's because regardless how good and special you are limited by being a human in this world and at 24/7. And what's going to determine your success, can you recruit and put people around you that are that special? And together as a team, you can actually do something that is way bigger than the team sum of the minutes that you execute. And it's a very, very similar in the military, and I find it very similar in the private sectors when you build companies.
So for future entrepreneurs out there, take a couple years off, join the military.
Forget about school, go straight to
yeah. You never know. But that's awesome. I really appreciate that. All right, let's jump into the exciting stuff. Now, this is an incredible statistic that I've read in different places. I heard you guys talking about on a Bloomberg interview as well, that 75% of the global $100 trillion economy is what we call physical industries. These are companies that make and distribute physical products. And so your business has been about going in and transforming these kind of old line industries by applying modern technology. Here's what's so surprising. Given that it's a $75 trillion opportunity, why have so many others either been slow to move into those markets to do the same thing, or in many cases, just bypass them altogether?
Yeah. It's fascinating, it's actually the statistics is 85%, and it's about 100 trillion of the
Oh
world.
my gosh.
Wow. Today it's growing, right?
Yeah.
Like physical industries, defense, energy, manufacturing, supply chain, mining, construction, cetera, et cetera. And I came from, I never went to school, but I came from likes to build stuff. So I always call it came from the hardware world, manufacturing world. So it's obvious to me this is where's my passion. But what I was surprised is when I started Eclipse about 10 years ago, less than 1%, actually it was 0.7% of the total venture money went after 85% of the world GDP.
That's
And I'm like,
crazy.
this is really odd. And I'm like, why is the case? So I went and talked
Yeah.
to any VCs and any growth investors where they told me, Lior, this is really hard industries. But if he wants to do enterprise software or fintech, come join us and invest. And I'm like, I have zero passion about those sectors. I love building companies in physical industries, but I think historically it was just really hard to build companies in those sectors. And we got obsessed in Silicon Valley with the image of two guys in their pajamas, 20 years old in their garage writing a code. And turn out that it's hard to build rockets or a car like that.
Yeah.
The flip side, the richest person on earth made his fortune by building cars and rockets. He actually didn't make his fortune by building this software. So I think the reality is this is the most interesting areas of society and humanity. And I think we are going to see just a massive curve of disruption coming in those industries.
Yeah, what I think is kind of interesting, about this whole concept is that if you think about it, if you take these huge industries, which are comprised of huge, old line companies that have large market share presence, lots of clients, they're decades upon decades old. You would think by going in there with technology and making them more innovative, faster, leaner, more productive, that would actually be a lower risk thesis for an investor.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I'm seriously, like, I'm not joking. It was bizarre to me to see how very little amount of capital going into the largest economies in the world. And you're like, I thought we are telling people go after the largest TAM,
Right.
but we actually, investors are not doing that by themselves because it's too hard or too complicated or whatnot. But hey, sure, I will go after it. And I think what you were mentioned, Tim, that is what we are seeing is technology is actually giving you productivity in those sectors.
Mm-hmm.
Technology is actually giving you the ability to move dependency from geography. Technology is actually giving you in physical industries the ability to automate processes and do things in a new way, like like Elon did with Tesla around electrification, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think about this amazing value that society got by electrifying cars.
Yeah.
So I'm just couldn't be more bullish on what we are seeing in the market around those companies right now.
That's awesome. Now, another thing I got when I was kind of doing a little research and on the firm and the company and tell me if I'm wrong here, but I felt this kind of vibe that was very nationalistic towards the United States, this feeling of like, we need to make this country, the United States. And again, you're Israeli by birth.
Yeah.
We need to make us strong in terms of our own infrastructure, not having dependency, the freedom to secure our defense, right? To bring manufacturing back on shore, whether it be chips or drugs or whatever the critical infrastructure that we're going to need to survive as a country is, and making our industries really strong again. And it's a very different feeling. I can't explain it. It's just like if you read enough of it, you feel that vibe. And it's very different than you would feel from almost any other venture capital firm or PE firm, where the focus is on the business opportunity, global markets, return on investment. Am I wrong there? And where does that, if I'm right, where does that come from? What's driven that in you?
I'll say, first of all, I start my career in the military and knowing that we don't want to be on the other side. And I want my kids to be able to grow up in democracy. I grew up in democracy and I'm a citizen here. My kids are Americans. And I think one of our job is to protect our teams. And it's kind of, I will tell you more than that, team. When we made our first investments in a defense company in 2017 or 2018, I got a phone calls from people that saying, you should not invest in defense. This is not what we do in Silicon Valley. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? This is my team. I'm Team USA. My job is actually that this team to win.
I love
Um,
that.
but I think we just lost it because we lost it on the name of globalization, and we want to buy a cheap T-shirt, so we outsource everything. We actually don't really care who is the manufacturer because we have here comfortable lives in California. And I'm just
Mhm.
very much challenging this perception. And as a someone that built factory in China in 2013 and see from firsthand the power, and good for them. By the way, Team China is winning in a lot of industries
For
because
sure.
we were focusing on that. I was like, I'm going to do anything in my power for my team to win. And physical industries is the only thing that matters. Because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, when you're starting some enterprise software or fintech company, maybe you and your team will make money, but you make almost zero impact on the GDP and on the US economy. When you build a company like Tesla or SpaceX, you made a tremendous impact on Team USA and, of course, the people around you, the people that build the factory, the service providers, the whole circular economy around those businesses.
Yeah, I've got a pod that will be published in a couple of weeks with a cool guy named John Chaputis, who has been a major data site investor and builder, just completed under the kind of the Stargate umbrella,
Yeah.
a $3.4 billion data center. And we always talked about that AI, we said the expression AI is going to drive the world is really not true. It's the infrastructure behind AI that drives the world, just as you just expressed. And I think people kind of forget about that. They get allured by the technology and they forget, well, what's powering it? If there's no infrastructure to power it, it's nothing. And the winner on a global scale, and certainly if there's, an issue in the world, right? Hopefully never comes to that, but who knows? You've got to be able to provide that power and infrastructure for the technology, or it just it's like unplugged from the wall.
Yeah. No, Tim, we actually hired our first policy head. We announced it
I
this
was going to ask you about that next question for sure. Yeah,
uh, and I think it's coming with the notion that what we do have so much importance to the government here, and it's like physical industries is part of their core job, providing us
yeah.
infrastructure and energy, etc. And it's I completely agree that it's a race on. More than that, like literally a country is talking about attacking other country because they have semiconductor infrastructure. So the idea here is the new currency of the world and governments is actually technology infrastructure, and we need to do everything in our job as a builder to build that here domestically in US and have the team winning.
Well, I think under the current administration, for sure, I haven't seen the government in many many years so involved in trying to bring industry back, and getting involved in regulation from a deregulation standpoint, making things easier. And if you are investing in these huge infrastructure sectors like you've mentioned, it almost seems like you have to have and someone who's experienced with public policy as a liaison, right? Because how can you make decisions without having insight from where the next administration's going?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a brilliant move. I think it's Thomas Storch. I saw the announcement earlier,
Coach,
and he
exactly.
actually served. Did he
And,
serve in the Trump
yeah,
administration before?
yeah.
Or yeah,
He was in Trump administration and 1.0. He was in the White House and the DOE. Brilliant mind
yeah.
of someone that can help us and our companies understand how we should engage with the governments in order for the team here to win. And I will say that I went to the White House now probably 4 times in the last 4 weeks.
Oh
I'm
wow,
very, very, very encouraged
that's
by
great.
those people really wants to having Team USA win. And they're like, they ask me, "Yo, what do you need in order to build faster?" And I never heard that things from a government before.
Yeah, I think the Doge stuff, is amazing too. When you hear about um, checks going out with no account allocation written on them, so they're not applied anywhere. It's like this is stuff. If one of our children who's 14, 15, 16 started a little business and they used QuickBooks or something, right? Or didn't even use that, they would know that when I write a check to someone, I put who it's for in the memo, the purpose, and to think that we're sending billions of dollars out and we don't even know that. It's hard to fathom, I mean, it blows my mind.
Yeah, we. I really hope those guys are going to do a proper job, because we needs to win. And I
Yeah.
continue to remind my neighbors and my friends that, asking me is like, oh, why you guys so care about building it? I was like, why? Because you live here and we enjoying things that we think are um, mandatory or must have. And I'm like, no, this is a very unique and special. We need to protect that. And that's meaning having a common sense in the government. And that's meaning understanding where we're spending and investing our capital. And that's meaning figuring out how we can help physical industries build faster in these countries. I'm just excited to go build.
That's awesome. Hey, for the audience who's watching, I'd love for you to give me, because you've invested in so many type of companies over the years, probably an example of like a use case or an investment that you made, kind of why you invested in it, how it's changing the traditional sectors in, just so people have a better understanding of exactly kind of where your efforts are placed.
Yeah, I mean, we're just staying on the AI data centers and infrastructure. We built a company called Cerebras, and we're using wafer scale integration in order to build artificial intelligence computers. And based on that computers, we are building data centers, and the company grew to become very, very large, hundreds of millions of dollars, and super successful and kind of next generation semiconductors post the GPU arena. And
Okay.
so that's kind of like a great example. And, we've been working with the company now for almost 9 years, just helping them building next generation chips and computers and data centers in US. And very excited about the trajectory of this business. Of course, we didn't knew 9 years ago that this thing called AI will be exist. We just
Right.
knew that Moore's law is achieving its plateau, and we need a new next generation of semiconductor. And we went out and used basically what's called wafer scale integration. Basically, we're using all of the wafers as one big chip.
Right.
I want this company in United States. We want to have the most cutting edge semiconductor. On the other hand, very different industries. We are outside of Boston. Build a company using high speed lasers to manufacturing precision metal parts.
Okay.
Metal
Very
parts,
cool.
it's a $3 trillion industry. 3 trillion.
So they used to be cut by a physical knife or something like that, right? And now
CNC,
it's, yeah.
exactly. CNC and milling machine
Right.
that, of course, like almost 100% be based in China.
Wow.
We are bringing that manufacturing onshore using high-speed lasers and basically automation in order to manufacturing metal parts for the medical industries, consumer electronics,
Mhm.
aerospace and defense. So it's, of course, very different very different companies, but give you a sense on the type of businesses that we like.
That's amazing. Now, do you have a certain amount that you invest in each company, or do you acquire the companies, or what's your model look like traditionally?
Yeah, we are a minority shareholder. Some of the companies we start with the team, so we incubate. Some of the companies we lead early stage round, seed, Series A, Series B, and
Oh, okay.
we also have a growth vehicle that we can do later stage. We love compounding capital, so we can start with a 5, 10, $15 million check, but we have some of our companies that over time we wrote 100, 150, $200 million into a single business.
Wow.
So
As a follow-on investment or the
exactly.
initial?
Or we led multiple rounds.
Yeah.
So we love to compound capital, and those businesses can take capital when they're successful. So we are not shy to play across the stack
Yeah.
and investing across the stack.
So if you start and the company grows and does well, you could be an investor from cradle to grave, essentially, or to exit, we should
100%.
say. Yeah,
Yes,
that
yes.
that's 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 really amazing. Well, cool. That really helps. Thanks a lot. I wanted to jump real quickly. We talked a little bit earlier, but I always like to get into this because a lot of the people in my personal network and people that watch this are entrepreneurs and founders of companies, and that's about the founder's mindset. And I would love to get your perspective because, again, you started in Israel. You have served in the Israeli national defense, so your perspective is a little bit different. What would you say from a founder's mindset are the qualities that separate the real men from the boys in terms of the great entrepreneurs that you've seen and invested in?
I would say that first of all, we are not usually investing in, 19 years old, drop off from university, wearing a hoodie with like a pizza box on the floor in the garage writing code, right? We invest in
Yeah.
people that are building real shit, rockets, parts,
Wow.
chips.
Yeah.
So, it's like not
There's a little gray hair sometimes.
actually our average age of our founder is, I think last time I checked, is like 41.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah,
unusual. Wow,
yeah.
that's
So
great.
it's like be careful of these oldies. I'm 41, so it's like, what do you know? Experience might be worth something. I think, we are really looking for people that have values of thinking really big, because those industries are that big, and you kind of need someone that's willing to build something that is not like a feature or some small piece of software and sell it really fast. It's someone that actually wants to build a real scalable big business. We want someone that can attract enough capital, because those industries can take capital if you're successful. And then,
Hmm.
of course, we want people, we want entrepreneurs and partners that can attract amazing talent. Because you're going to build something that is very complicated to build, and that just requires the best mind from engineering point of view, hardware and software and ML and AI and electronics and mechanical and semiconductors and chip design and VLSI. It's actually, you build a full stack, and it's just required you the ability to attract incredible talent.
Well, it sounds to me like too that the mindset for the type of people you invest in, it's more around true transformation, as opposed to here's a cool technology, we're doing different things, it's more efficient, it's faster, blah blah blah, versus we're going to transform an industry fundamentally. And
Correct.
that I think is a much bigger view. It's more comprehensive. And it takes a little more gray hair, I would say, right? Because these industries took decades upon decades to build. If you look at a Fortune 500 CEO out of tech, they're not 25 years old.
They're
They're
not.
probably 50 years old and up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it takes that time, right, to go through the channels and run the various parts of an organization that are physical. I mean, I started manufacturing, and one of the big hurdles for the top superstars, where they eventually had to run a manufacturing plant that could have 2,000 workers and employ half of a town. You don't do that when you're 25, and if you make it through that hurdle, then you're running 5 of them. Then you're going international. So when you finally get to the top, you've had a very diverse experience at a very high level, very much like the military in some ways. Yeah.
And exactly, and because the stake is so high, and you need to deal with the government, you need
Hmm.
to deal with very large customers, you need to deal
Labor.
for
That's a big one.
scale. It's like, it's not. By the way, I just asked my friend Sam slash ChatGPT, average age of Fortune 500 CEO is 58.
Wow, really? Wow.
Yeah.
That
So
surprises me with the big tech companies too.
I think it's a testimonial that experience
So
works.
I need to test that out with Grok. I was experimenting with Grok 3.0 today. It's I think it's giving ChatGPT a pretty good run for its money.
Uh,
That's the problem. If one AI says 58 and the other AI says 41, we have a little bit of an issue. But
yeah.
I think anything over 45, I think the point's well taken, right?
Totally.
And then when you make the pitch to people, I'm sure it's very different, right? It's not they really want to work through the history of the industries, and there's probably a lot of pushback, more so than you would see with maybe a young innovative company or young innovative industry, where they're always looking for new ideas, they're always open to innovation. I would think there's a lot of pushback and a lot of barriers to overcome with these types of companies in these industries.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying that you will not find the someone that younger that will be able to be very successful, of course. But yeah, we find that our average age is about that, and we also, as a results team, all of our folks at Eclipse came from an operating background,
Hmm.
because exactly that reason. We want to have a builder on one side, working with a builder on the other side, and we just find that there is a lot of commonality on the level of the discussion and respect. So it's not only, yes, we're investing in the company, of course, and they are building the company, but also there is like a partnership. Hey, we've been in
Yeah.
your shoes before. We know how it's to build companies in those sectors. And we believe now we can help you on the board as the main investors build your business well.
Yeah, I love that, because unless you've been an operator before, from the investor perspective, you may not fully feel the pressure, of making payroll, of retaining people in a market where things aren't going well and other recruiters are banging on the door trying to steal your people. The weight of the world is on your shoulders. Um, when you can't sleep at night, that urgency to, you got to make it happen, all these things that entrepreneurs go through. Um, and then they later become investors. They can really connect with that aspect of it. And I think that's an amazing thing. You don't always see that, for example, if you're coming from more of a consulting or finance background and you're looking at the investment more from a logical statistical perspective, you miss a lot of that. I think that's really important, probably in coaching and managing these teams through difficult times, because you can connect with what it's like to have that happen to you, what that feeling is of like, so many people have depended on me, my reputation, and I made all these promises, and now I'm dealing with that weight and that pressure. It's so different than when you're just investing from the outside. And I think it's a good thing, although difficult.
It's like it's funny when we're on a board meeting and there is other investors, and I know that investors never operate anything, and they're making those big statements and pitch, and I'm like, you're actually never being on the other side. Like, how do you even making those statements? Kind of not fair to the founder.
Well, it's true. And then like your head of sales walks in and says, "Good news, bad news. Unfortunately, I'm going to a competitor." Like,
Yeah.
the investor gets worried about it, but you're thinking like, "Wow, I mean, did I misjudge this person? Where's the loyalty? What went wrong? Now I got to find somebody new." And it's just, and that multiplied by 1,000, it's just, that's why I have such respect for entrepreneurs. And whenever I hear these lunatics out there saying there should be no billionaires, I'm
Yeah.
like, are you kidding me? Do you know what it takes to build that? Do you know the pressure? Do you know how few people ever can ascend to that? And think of all the jobs and the investment returns and the pensions and all this virtual outflow that
Yeah.
comes from the success of a person who had an idea and then the cojones to just drive through all the incoming. And so I so respect those people. And it just drives me nuts when I hear
Yeah.
people say
And
like, there should be
sometimes,
no millionaires, or,
yeah,
or this guy made this much of money, but the person who was cleaning the driveway only made $10 an hour. And this is 100 times that. Is that really fair? I don't know what value was created. How many people benefited from that? How many people fail in the process and risk everything on it? To the victor goes the spoils.
yeah. Send those people that asking to some communist environment and tell them to call me after 1 year, and if they want to go or not. It's like it's hard to explain that, the amount of birthday that you miss of the kids, and
I know.
not be able taking them to school, and I mean the amount of anniversary I miss with the wife is it's the sacrifice of actually building those companies. So yeah, people that saying it's never built probably anything, and that's why they're saying it.
Well, and it's funny too, because, the true entrepreneurs, they're never building it for the money. They're
No,
building it for some greater purpose. So
correct.
you're trying to explain this to your wife, and you're trying to say, well, this is going to be for our benefit, and we make a good living, and the kids can live in a nice house. But you really can't use that argument, because she's like, there's a million easier ways, Lior, to make money and provide a nice life in Palo Alto or wherever we are, the Silicon Valley. You don't have to like stay up every night and risk it all. But that's the mindset. And I guess when you have a partner, they've got to understand, what drives the partner on the other side.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate that my wife well familiar with the crazy man she met, and she knows that I'm my passion is building, and that
Yeah.
just required a lot of personal sacrifice, and she's being an amazing partner on that.
So what was one of the toughest projects that you ever went through? Maybe one of the hardest lessons learned that you could share? And it
It's like,
doesn't even have to be from investing. It could be from your time in the military, just a life lesson that you really learned the hard way.
there's actually a lesson that I'm shockingly made in the same mistakes I made in the military, also in the business side. And it's the mistake that I make the assumption that whatever seems to me obvious in my head is also
Mm-hmm.
obvious of everyone around me. And I'm constantly learning this is not the case. Um, and it's amazing because you take a group of people and you put them around one mission, and they're all wants to win together. And it's still when you actually asking people about a certain situation or a certain places, and you ask them, is like, are you super aligned and are you super crystal clear of what needs to be done here, and you actually get 8 different answers. and you're like, oh, this is bad leadership, is this is bad communication, and this is, and I constantly going back to, no, we are just a different people, and we can have
Yeah.
the same mission. We are the best friends or the best teammates or the best soldiers or the best entrepreneurs, and we hire the best people, and we are super aligned on what is the mission, and we still going to have a very different opinions and strategies and people mind, and it's nothing that you actually can fix.
Yeah. I don't know if
And
you want to, do you want to really fix it though? Because you think about it,
exactly.
the weakness or where somebody ultimately gets you, whether it's on a battlefield or whether it's in business or your company, is when people don't speak up and everybody goes with the normal program, and there's a vulnerability that no one exposes, the Achilles heel that always catches you. So I think, always taking in the information, and looking at all options, I think is a prudent way to do it. And if you don't have a diverse team in terms of diverse thought, you're going to miss a couple things. Or if you're in a yes man culture, and that's going to be the Achilles heel that's going to get you at the end. So I think it's important to have a diversity of thought in your team.
100%. And my biggest lesson is I contributed that historically to, oh, this thing is slowing me down. Why it's not here? Why they're not getting it? We should get the mission faster. It's already in my mind. Oh, we should solve this problem for this company, or we should raise that money. And I was like, I will be upset. Why not everyone moving as fast as I wants to move?
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I'm like, I learn over the years to I actually, by slowing down, that is not really slowing down, and listen to the team around me that I choose, that I selected, that I think are the best, will get me faster to whatever I'm trying to achieve. Even if that moment, my instinct was like, I just want us to move faster, go to the goal. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a common experience with a lot of serial entrepreneurs, right? Is speed is everything.
Yeah.
And, speed can get you there quicker or it can get you killed.
Yes.
So I think it's
Correct.
good to have a balance of people around you. I think that's one thing when we do recruiting a lot, we look at not just who's going to be a good chemistry, share the values, think alike, have the same mentality, but also who's going to balance out, the individual. And I think, the more open the founder or CEO is, and I think you've shared with that today, most of the great CEOs I've met are amazingly, they have a high level of humility, right?
Yeah.
Because they have scars on their back. They've been through it. Sometimes they had to learn it the hard way. But looking for people that are going to balance out those things that you think are sometimes um, great attributes that you have, but other people look at it and say, it can be a great attribute, but it can also, help you run into a brick wall. And I'm going to balance that out for you and pull you back a little bit. And it's uncomfortable. But then I see these teams where, you know, they've gone from team to team to team over like 20, 30 years with the same people. And the one you always initially go, why is this person with that person? Right. And then you realize that person's keeping them from running off the road, keeping them from being out of the fire. And they know that. And so that's why the team actually, flourishes so well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. It's always like I found that the best leader I ever worked with actually always also have some sort of an edge.
Yeah.
They're like not normal people. Uh, and I actually think people will contribute that to an arrogancy. And I'm actually contributing that to principles. I actually think you are right. Almost all of them had a high degree of humility, but also they had a very strong principles.
Mhm.
And those two things actually can live in a beautiful way. And I find that a lot of the people I admire in the military and in the commercial world have both.
Yeah, those two values that I people have asked me like what values mean the most to me, and I think it's a little bit true, which is it's integrity and loyalty. I
Yeah.
think you need the two of those together. If you could build a team that is loyal to each other, stands behind each other, but integrity is important, so they have the ability to step up and say, we're stepping out of the zone
Yeah.
that we've defined that we stand for, and pull people back in are really important. But again, it takes humility to build a team of people, and it creates an environment where you can express yourself
100%.
without worrying. So I get that sense for you, and obviously you've been so successful. Like other people I've met who have been successful and raised so much money and had built so many great companies. I find that humility is almost always there. It wasn't many times when they were younger, but as they learn through experience, that seems to be one of the key characteristics of success as I've seen it across all these CEOs. It kind of in that same vein, for kind of startup entrepreneurs, particularly those that maybe in looking at physical industries as well. What would be kind of some advice you would give them, maybe motivation, inspiration, or mistake avoidance as they think about whether they should dedicate their life to this? Because there is that commitment you just talked about. You'll often be misunderstood, even amongst your own family. People in the company are going to misunderstand that. So it's a big commitment. What would you like to share with them to push them forward and still go through with it?
Yeah, I would say it must be authentic. I'm all about
Mm-hmm.
authenticity, and I think I don't think most of the people should do it. That's actually because I actually don't think it will be authentic to them.
Yeah.
And if it's not authentic for you, you will not do the crazy bad shit you're going to need to do in order to build these companies, because you will need to do crazy stuff. You will need to attract an incredible talent. You will need to travel across the world. You will need to work 24/7. You will need to raise a lot of money. You will need to convince customers to give you a very large portion of their business and take massive risks when it's not make sense to do it almost at all. You will need to get the government to partner with you and some rules for you to build faster. So I just think if it's authentic to you, is the most rewarding things in the world. Actually, and I don't think when I say rewarding is there's nothing about the wealth.
It's such a small percentage. Like we live here in Silicon Valley, so it feels like everybody's got a business plan, stuck inside their shirt. We tend to think that when it's really a bubble. The reality is it's just a tiny fraction of people that actually do this in the world. Do you think that like that desire and that fire, do you think people develop that over time with success and observation? Or do you think that's something that you're kind of intrinsically born with?
I'm probably on the latter side. I think,
Yeah.
when you grow up and this your life story, and probably me walking in the bananas as a young teenager and being too much in the sun fried my brain, maybe in a way that it's helping me go and push. But I think it's a lot about the environments and genes and DNA and your life
Yeah.
story that probably got you to where you are. And yeah, no doubt that there is a success bringing success, no doubt. You think it's a wisdom and you became more smart. It's like, no, it's just easier to get successful when you're already being successful. That's kind of the secret around it, because you know more people and you can attract more capital. But I think, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can teach that stuff.
Yeah, I think you're right about that too. That I kind of lean in that direction. I remember about risk taking. The famous Bass family of the United States of billionaires. They had asked the father. He died a long time ago, but they had asked. He had said that the thing there's one factor that would determine whether he was incredibly wealthy beyond anything he could ever imagine, or whether he had nothing. And you know what
Uh,
that one factor was? The date in which he died.
yeah.
So, and that's the attitude. They'll just keep on doing it over and over again because there's something inside of them that wants to just keep on achieving things, and they're willing to risk it all. And if they die when they're at the top, they're at the top. If not, but there's no in between. There's no comfortable,
You know,
peaceful living. Yeah.
Tim, like on that end, then I use different language. I use a lot. It's luck.
Yeah.
It's like you can have the gene, have have all of that, do all and still lose. Actually,
Yeah.
most of the people will lose.
Yeah.
You need to be lucky.
I
That
think you're,
morning that you met that potential customers and he had a great day because his daughter got into this great school and he agreed to sign with you that contract that did not make sense, and with that you raised the money, and with that you hired the people, and with that you took the company public, and you are in the winning. Or he had a really bad day because she did not got into that school and he said no to the contract and he did not raise the money and he went bankrupt.
yeah. Yeah. I
One
was
reason,
watching I was watching this documentary on Napoleon a couple months ago,
yeah.
and I remember in it they had asked, the story. Someone had asked Napoleon, "What do you look for in great generals, underneath you?"
Yes.
And he said, the number one thing I look for is, are they lucky?
Yeah. Yeah.
So for all the great strategy and all that,
Uh-uh.
that magical X factor of luck supersedes everything. And some people it just seems like they have the Midas touch, and other people, no matter how brilliant they are, it just doesn't quite work out. And so
Yeah.
that's the magic.
Like my grandfather always used to say, is like, son, work really hard to open the door as much as you can to the luck to sneak in.
I love that.
You cannot control the luck. The only thing you control is maybe a little bit to bend how open or closes the door, and that's will determine by how hard you're going to work.
Yeah, yeah. Great advice. So listen, Leo, I like to always end these podcasts. It's been a lot of fun. It is called the Venture to Victory podcast. And I like to always ask with a question, what does it mean to you, whether it's in family, business, or, community, personal life, to be victorious?
For me, it's interesting. We take the Eclipse kids, the kids of our team at Eclipse, every year to see our companies.
Mm.
And you have babies 1 year old, and you have kids that are in their now teenagers, and that's a victory to me, because those kids can see how the sacrifice of their parents of
Mm.
spending so many hours of building these companies and the impact on their world, how this robot is actually manufacturing a drug, and how this uh, um, plane is autonomously landing, and how this machine is building electric car. They can actually connect between the world that they live in and the impact and the time commitments that their parents needs to invest in order to do it. So that's a
So
victory.
that's we used to call that the guilt bear. When you give the guilt teddy bear to the kids, it's a new form of it at a higher level. I
Yeah,
love that. But what I'd add to that too is I think it's probably super inspiring. Kids go, wow, I want to do something like that one day. And I think
yeah,
that's probably an amazing thing that you guys see all the time from that.
exactly. You hear from the kids of like, wow, I want to build a company. I want to be the next founder. And yeah, I'm no wall of shame or things for me. It's like showing them the companies I built.
Yeah, well, I think if we could build the next generation of kids that at least aspire to build and do great things, and do it, the way that takes time, not be in a hurry, not do it really quickly, not do it brashly, but really be thoughtful about it. I think we're going to create, a wonderful world. So, hey, I really appreciate you joining me today. It's been a tremendous amount of fun. I always learn things. If someone wants to find you or your team or reach out, kind of what's the best way to do that?
Lior at eclipse.capital. You will find me.
That's absolutely amazing. Well, thank you so much. And that's a wrap for today. Cheers, everyone. Bye. The Venture to Victory podcast is provided by MatchStar Venture Search. If you're interested in any of our open executive roles or need help sourcing world-class talent for your company, check out our website at matchstar.com.